Hello and welcome back to Future You, the podcast brought to you by graduate careers experts Prospects. I'm your host, Emily Slade, and in this episode, I speak to Darcy about being an editor.
I am Darcy. I am an editor for Prospects.
Amazing. So what do you mean when you say editor?
A whole host of things, really. So primarily copywriter, but also more recently multimedia stuff, so video, occasionally helping out with a bit of podcast editing and sub-editing, subbing, social media posts, basically anything that requires words for the website.
Amazing. So let's go right back to the beginning.
Yes.
What does your educational journey look like?
Fairly standard one, really. I did A-levels in both Englishes. Again, I love words, and psychology. And then I did an English degree at Newcastle University. And then from there, I actually got a scholarship to study journalism, which is where I went down this path rather than just writing for fun and blogging for fun. So I got a scholarship for women in the Northeast to study journalism. And it was kind of on that course where I started doing more of the multimedia side of journalism rather than just the copywriting that I was doing as a hobby. So I started doing things like video journalism, podcast editing, and it was from there that I decided that I wanted to go into media.
Nice. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, I work from home, so I will log on, see if there's any requests from marketing to sub any of their materials. And then usually I am either updating or writing content for the website. So SEO comes into it a lot, search engine optimization for our copy, seeing where we can beat sort of competitors, if there's anything that we don't cover that students are looking for, what people are searching for, and just trying to provide the best quality content that we can about courses, careers, to just help people on that journey.
So what skills would you say you need to be an editor?
Attention for detail probably being the biggest one, which is often a struggle with my ADHD, but I get there. And I think just the ability to analyse other people's work as well, because I'm often subbing what other editors or people in marketing or other content creators have produced, being able to analyse a piece of writing or a piece of work, what are they trying to get across, and is there any way that I can help them convey that message clearer or sort of put more nuance into the message that they're trying to convey. So yeah, communication skills, analysis, and attention to detail.
What does progression look like in this role? Where can you go with this?
I think it's quite peculiar in the sense that progression is kind of shaped by the landscape of what's happening in sort of the digital arena, I guess, rather than a traditional role like in law where it's quite obvious stages to move up. I think where my career progresses is it goes down the lines of what's happening in search engine optimization, for example. And, there's such a big rise in multimedia content. So you can just be a copywriter, but obviously to progress, you need to hone those skills in video editing, audio editing, and kind of being a jack of all trades in that area. So when people hear editor, traditionally they probably think newspaper editor, overseeing the newspaper. But I think especially moving forward, it's going to be more down those multimedia pathways, which is something that I really enjoy. My master's helped me to develop, and I think it's lucky that it did, because I now got those skills to go into. I can pick up video if someone needs me to, rather than just having that like one pathway from an English degree of writing.
Yeah, brilliant. So what are your thoughts on the constant progression, the quick progression of AI? Is it going to take your job from you?
I knew you were going to say this. I think anyone in any creative industry is worried about AI at the minute, or if you're not worried, you are paying attention to what it's doing. What I would say is, again, AI can't do the analysis that is needed to. AI is not in your company, and AI doesn't speak to students like in my role. AI doesn't know the person in your audience and doesn't have that nuance of what they want to hear. It can guess, but it'll never know as well as you do. So I think you have to keep in mind that you have the nuance of having a human brain and that you know what your audience want. And I think in terms of copywriting, yes, AI can produce some pretty decent copy, but I've never created a piece of copy using ChatGPT and thought that can pass as a real human for certainly like a professional piece of work. And I also think readers don't necessarily want AI all the time. So I think there are probably aspects of the job that will slowly become taken over by AI. But I think, especially in terms of the content that we provide, it's careers advice. You have to be compassionate and professional, and it needs to be accurate. You can't give people false information. And I just can't see a world in which AI can be authoritative, compassionate, and all that sort of stuff in the situation that people are coming, particularly to our website for advice.
Yeah. Are there any myths about being an editor that you would like to debunk?
I think for me, getting into this career, I was a bit worried because I think when you think of arts careers or you think of careers in the media, I don't think you necessarily think of perhaps a woman from the northeast. I think you probably think of, a man on Fleet Street in London writing for the Financial Times. And I remember when I first was sort of going into that, I want a career in the media, and I just thought it's unattainable for me, which is what my scholarship was designed to offer. But, I've got friends and graduates on the same course as me who have also got into the media. So I would say a myth kind of is that you can't do it. Like, I've managed to do it, and I think it's, if you put the time in and you've got the skill and you're passionate about it, you definitely can. It is just definitely a labour of love. I did a lot of free work, I did a lot of voluntary work, and obviously study to get where I am. But there's nothing to say that you can't do it just because you haven't got the traditional background.
And is that advice that you would give to try and start writing your own things, setting up your own blogs to showcase and get your own writing out there?
Absolutely. I think I had my own website for 3 years, just posting basically as a portfolio rather than even trying to get, it ranking on search engines. It's brilliant if you're applying for jobs to be able to link to that and you've just got examples of all of your writing. Obviously you can host video, audio on there now as well. But yeah, I volunteered for charities. I'd review music for independent labels for free. I'd write for student newspapers. So just literally anything you can get your hands on. If you've got the time to do it, I think it's sometimes hard knowing when to draw the line and not burn yourself out working for free. I'm not saying go and do, like 6-week internship without being paid. Don't let yourself be exploited. But if you're passionate about it, like I loved my music and it didn't feel like I was being forced to do it. It was something that I enjoyed and it was also experience. So yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. What would you say is the most challenging part of being an editor?
For me, it's definitely the feedback sometimes. So I guess, especially in a creative role, I know sometimes getting feedback can be difficult. And I think when you put your all into creating something, that can be quite hard to get feedback. Potentially have to change things, but I think as I've grown in my role, I'm a lot more receptive to it. And I think if you ask questions as to why and you understand the real sort of what people are trying to help you do, it just ultimately it helps you become a better writer or better editor. But definitely at first, I think going from, writing my own blogs, posting them myself online and just checking for spelling mistakes to get an actual constructive feedback on the way that I like my writing style and things was difficult. But as long as like no one's ever trying to critique you in a negative way, it's always constructive. So I think when you learn to start sort of implementing some of that into your work, I've certainly noticed my writing and fluency and all that sort of stuff improve. So yeah, I think that was difficult to be receptive to at first, but I've definitely learned with time to implement that a bit more.
So as you previously mentioned, you are neurodiverse.
I am, yeah.
So how does that affect your working day?
So I'm autistic and I have ADHD. Autism wise, it's more about, I guess, how you behave in the workplace or how you communicate with others. I think my workplace is great. I'm open with everyone. Everyone knows my quirks and, my traits. And I have adjustments that help me on my day-to-day life. But I think certainly in other workplaces, I've really struggled with sort of intense human interaction all the time. I think I used to get really burnt out. I used to work in teaching, and I think that was really intense being around people all the time and almost having to mask. But I think I work from home, and again, like I said, I work on a small team. So in terms of my autism, I think it's just learning to be open, and it was quite nice that my diagnosis, I was late diagnosed. I was diagnosed at 24, but my diagnosis sort of happened at the same time as I graduated and went into the world of work. So, I didn't ever have to sort of come with this new idea of who Darcy is. I was just Darcy, and that was what I was like. In terms of ADHD, I think that's probably where I struggle to manage it the most. Energy levels can be up and down. One day I can feel like I've done a whole months worth of work, hyper focus, I can work all day through. The next day I'm just really struggling with concentration. But again, it's about being open with your colleagues, and just finding out what environment works best for you, and like tips and tricks on how you can trick the brain. Sometimes I'm like, I'll reward myself with, if I get this done, then I'll have a coffee. And just those little things that motivate me. But yeah, definitely being open with people that you work with, if you feel comfortable to. I know not everyone does. And like accessing those reasonable adjustments, like flexible working, particularly for ADHD, like sometimes starting at 8 a.m, it would be better to start at 9:30 and finish at 6, and then I get more work done. So if you can, obviously, I know some rules you won't be able to, but if you can, it's all about advocating for yourself, and what works for you.
So within your role, you've got your degrees, you've got your masters, do you have to keep evolving your skill sets? Do you have to keep going into training?
Yeah, so like I said, the digital landscape is just constantly changing, and I don't think anyone really can predict what's going to happen next. So keeping your skills up to date, I do a lot of CPD, always watching SEO webinars. I've done SEO copyright training because, that is a completely different ballpark to just writing nice, pretty copy. You've got to get the technical elements in as well. What are people searching for? I've done content strategy courses, so with Chartered Institute of Marketing, working out what content works, who your audience are, rather than just churning out as much as possible, having quite a nice strategy behind what are you producing, why. And I've done proofreading courses, just to keep my knowledge up to date. So I think I'm always looking for training where I can, one, to progress my career from being a graduate, and two, because the way that we work is changing so often, you will get left behind, especially with, like, what we're talking about, AI. The introduction to AI overviews recently is something that we've had to come to terms with on Google, and without the training and without the background knowledge, I feel like you'd be struggling behind a bit compared to your competitors. So it's really important to do competitor analysis and also CPD, not only for your own career, but for success in the role.
Yeah, brilliant. What's your favourite thing about being an editor?
I love working with words, and I've always loved words from when I was younger. I love reading, and writing I really enjoy it. Especially if I can get my teeth into a new topic or something that I don't know about, and feeling like it's a really satisfying feeling like I've put together something comprehensive that answers questions. And I think particularly working for prospects, that what you're putting out there is going to benefit someone, and someone's going to read it and find, hopefully, security knowing that what they want to do is out there, or whether it's not even for them and you've answered their question. I think knowing that someone's going to read something that I've put together and take something really meaningful away for it is a really lovely feeling.
So how did you get your job with prospects?
Graduating my masters, everyone was looking for, obviously, graduate jobs, and it was hell out there, to be honest. The field of how many jobs are available, but also how many applications there were to send out. And every job wants a cover letter and a tailored CV, which is to be expected if you want to get a job. But when you're in that graduate position, it's really overwhelming. But at the time I was working in education, like I said, in an English department in a high school. And I think that, coupled with the fact that I was also studying, my master's degree in journalism, was a perfect combination. I already had the knowledge of qualifications and obviously working with young people and knowing what it was like to go through exams and all that sort of thing. So I had that background and my writing background, plus all the experience that I developed over the years, working for free and volunteering and writing a blog. So I think I applied on LinkedIn, had a video interview, and I had a writing task to do. And once I'd done those, I got the job, and the interview was lovely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Darcy for their time. For more information on becoming an editor, head to prospects.ac.uk or check out the show notes below. For a full-length video version of this episode, head to our YouTube channel at FutureYouPod. If you enjoyed the episode, do feel free to leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Thank you, as always, for listening, and good luck on your journey to future you.